On land, you can see shit. Like, you know what's there. Under the water, you don't know what's swimming 100 feet below you. So, to some degree, I think people have, some fear of the water. Because, I mean, we fear the unknown. And that's the very definition of the ocean. It covers most of the planet, and you don't know what the fuck is under there.
And I think the big thing that catches you is because as you're swimming and you can't see under you, like you said, above ground, you can kind of see. I see that bear, I know to run. I don't know what
Whether you could get away,
giant.
I don't know if running is the best idea, but
I'll die tired.
You are listening to Trophy Horse with your hosts, Tricky Nick, Alex, I Yield to No One, Sid, and Ender Phoenix.
And I know it's been a couple weeks, but the Trophy Wars are back tonight. At least at 50% manpower. Tricky is off doing Antarctic work. I think we sent him to the Antarctic, right, Alex?
it's where he deserves to be.
Well, every time Mother Nature cries in minus 32 degrees weather, Tricky goes off to the Antarctic to do whatever the hell he does in the cold weather. But as you just heard, we do have Alex with us tonight. How you doing, Alex?
I think that still, even at 50% manpower, that's normally 50% manpower trophy horse is like 150% manpower anywhere else. So I think we're doing all right percentages wise.
I'll take those odds. Better than the odds of Yield being here on a Super Bowl night. Just kidding. No, he actually was trying to get here, but was running into technical difficulties. But we will have
Yeah, I
a little
doubt Yield
check-in
wants
with
to
him
watch
later.
a Patriots Seahawks Super Bowl. Like, I
I
mean, I
don't.
get if you're getting together with friends and family, that's one thing. But I very much got the impression that Yield was like, I would just. He said he would throw on the game for shits and giggles, but otherwise didn't care, which I totally get because like Sam Darnold versus Drake May, even if you're like a football fan, like neither one of those quarterback names is all that impressive. So
See, all that just went over my head. I have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
I figured, Matt, I figured, but I would throw it out there to make it seem like we know something about the pigskin.
Well, you definitely do. I do not. I can barely understand what a fourth town conversion is compared
Hey
to.
man, I play fantasy basketball, not fantasy football anymore. So I dabble in the sports, but if it's not Kentucky football or basketball, I'm not. I don't know. I'm not up to date on everything all that much. So
See, in the nerd world, they say that fantasy football is like football D&D for people who aren't good at football or D&D. So, anyways, so yeah, this is episode 704. It's been a couple weeks. We've had a couple things happen in our personal lives on our end. Me, I was basically sitting on a couch for a week and a half after I pulled my back. So, long story short, V and I moved recently, and
were
here's
you
the
lifting all
important
those
things,
really
folks.
heavy Soundwave figures out of boxes and putting them up somewhere, lifting them too
Close,
high?
close books, boxes of books. We have tons of books, and by tons, I do use the word literally because I pulled my back a couple weeks ago. Then, it started getting better, and I felt like I was able to do things. And then we had a snowstorm come through. Here we got probably, rookie hour numbers. I think you guys got much more out there, but we had about good 8 to 10 inches, at least where I lived. Well, re-injured the back doing that. So I was held up for another week. And then as it was getting better, literally on a Friday night, I go to bend over to pick up Narga and I hit the floor. Literally, that's how much it tweaked on me.
Are you saying that Narga needs to lose some lbs?
I would, but I didn't even get to pick him up. I literally, it was the act of reaching over and putting my arm down. I would say probably at that point, 10 out of 10 pain, probably the most pain I've ever felt in my entire life, and ended up in the ER that night because I could barely walk. So,
Jesus. I mean, we're at the age where stuff like that, like the simplest move, because I was going out to our garage and throwing away some trash, and I was running back into the house like I normally do. Like I'll, skip a step or run up the steps if, from time to time. And I was there just, it's like 3 steps up into the house from the garage. And on like the second step, like one of my, I didn't twist anything, but like there was just a pain in my ankle when I went on the stairs. Now I was walking fine, but momentarily when I put my foot down, it's like, oh shit. And so like, yeah, when you get past probably even 30, 35, your body just does funky, weird shit.
it's truly those memes of, you see a 20-year-old kid get hit by a car, gets up and walks it off. And then the next image is of a 40-year-old guy bent over, not able to move. It's like, what happened? I breathed wrong in my sleep.
Tried to get the groceries out of the, tried to get one too many bags of groceries out of the trunk of the car.
So unfortunately, last week between additional bad weather and, me unable to sit in a freaking chair for extended periods, unfortunately, the trophy horse have missed a couple weeks. So we've got a lot of catching up to do. So if you're good with it, Alex, we'll get it running on this show.
I'm fine with that.
So we have our updated trophy counts. These numbers have shifted a little bit since the last time we all talked. So Tricky is at level 979 with 35,412 trophies and 1,021 platinums. Alex, your trophies?
I am at level 531, total trophy count of 11,150 or 11,150 and a platinum count of 206 and 205 platinum. 206 platinums in 205 games. There we go.
Gotcha. And yield is level 541, 10 above you. You're catching up. And total trophies of 11,719 and 225 platinums. I am languishing at level 223 with 1,370 platinums. Yeah, that would be a change. 1,370 trophies and 0 platinums. And Sid is at level 901, 28,047 trophies and 867 platinums. Speaking of Sid, it's, we've been a little more regular with it on the show when we actually have a show, but we do have a Sophie's Trophies this week. So with that, take it away, Sid.
Hello everyone, it's Sid again with your platinum shoutouts for this week. Before I start, guys, I have to be honest, these were sent to me last week, but as there was no show, I didn't record last week, so I'm working on a week behind. So the ones I get this week, I will probably read out next week, just to keep you all informed if you're wondering why I am reading last week's. But we have a few here this week, guys, and the first one we have is from Ed J3DG with Trackmania Turbo on the PS4 and Injustice 2 on the PS4. Next up, guys, we have Psychist with Foreclosed on the PS5 and Family Mysteries 3 Criminal Mindset on the PS5. That sounds like a really cheap TV show. Then we have Yield with the Stanley Parabel Ultra Deluxe on the PS5. And Ifrit Hellfire 90 with Visions of Mana on the PS5. Next up, guys, is Pee-wee ITFC with Red Dead 2 on the PS4. Then we have Redbeard Rick with Curious Expedition on the PS4. And Shotty Sniper 123 with A Quiet Place, The Road Ahead on the PS5. And Katamari Damacy Reroll on the PS4. Next up, guys, is Tricky with Fight for America on the PS4. And last but not least is Dupes 25 with Infinity Stash Dragon Quest on the PS5. So, my shout out this week, guys, it has to be EDJ3DG with Trackmania and Injustice 2. I mean, that is good going, man. So, well done to you for that one. But that is going to be it from me, guys, this week. I will talk to you again next week and hope you're all okay. Keep getting those trophies. Have fun. Bye.
And thank you very much, Sid. I always appreciate you coming in with your report. And as I mentioned, Yield wasn't able to be here today. However, we did have him write in for the trophy rarity update. So, through the magic of editing, we're going to cut in Yield here, and he'll give you a real quick update on that.
Hey everybody, this is the rarity update for the 8th of February, 2026. Sorry I couldn't be there this week. Discord doesn't want to cooperate with me. So while Matt and Alex are recording you a banger of an episode, I will at least be here in spirit doing the rarity update for this episode. So leading off in Division 1, Diego's lead at the top of the table was cut to 25 points, with Doc Chicken 13 closing the gap thanks to a top score of 115. Diego actually had the second highest score within the division with 77. Rolling on the floor laughing out loud, Z and X-Nightmare 317 picked up points to keep them in third and fourth in their debut Division 1 season. Psychiatrist suffered some decay but managed 10 points to remain in fifth. The middle of the pack is congested with Nitro, myself, and Rick all picking up similar points. I had 26 points, moving myself to 168 for the season in seventh. The big mover towards the bottom of the table was Marky Frazier, who scored 51 to take him out of the drop zone on 122. He was replaced there by Eifert Hellfire 90, who scored 20 and moves to 120. Last season's runner-up Pee Wee dropped to the foot of the table with 95. Division 2, Dupes was the big mover in Division 2, moving into the promotion spot thanks to a huge 350 points. While some of this may appear bloated due to platting a newly released, the plat in Stardew Valley helped his score. Shoddy Sniper moved up to the top spot with the second highest score of 117, moving him to 450. CJ drops to third, just 41 points behind Dupes with 360, whilst modest scores from Mr. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle 84 and Meets Goats a lot saw them slip to fourth and fifth. Tricky scored 20 points with some legacy points and his usual 10 from the jumping titles. Garrus quotes, not mine. He moves to 111 on the season in eighth, with his rarest trophy of the week now being Now I'm Hungry in the Jumping Falafel at 99.58%. I think he's poking fun at you, Tricky. Alex drops down the table with his score of 12 this week, moving him to 81. Crook and Prometheus 101 occupy the regulation spots on 31 and minus 10 points respectively. Now for Division 3, the top two from last week remain in the top spots again. The Big Don increased his lead at the top with 30 points, with a 30-point increase, taking him to 204, while it's Murray 2011 had 16 to keep him second on 134 points. Top score in this division this week goes to Homer Get Stuff with 50 points, shooting him up to third with 97. Resident Daryl drops to fourth on 81 with his score of 30. Dodge Williams scored well with 33 to move him up to fifth. He overtook Departed 570 in the process, who moves to 46 points but drops to sixth. Darth Knight 82 picks up his first points of the season to take him off the foot of the table and into eighth with 24 points. The bottom four all went trophyless this week. Kalai, Dat One Seagull, Big Bernardo B, and Stink Palm are separated by 7 points, ranging from 11 to 4. Now, for the rarest trophy of the week. Fifth goes to Edge with Get Good Wood from GTA 4 at a 4.35%. Fourth was Resident Daryl with Zio, probably pronouncing that wrong, with Stick Fight at 4.28%. In third, we have Doc Chicken 13 with Vince Lombardi Legacy Award. at a 3.26%. In second, we have Shoddy Sniper 123 with Deity from Divinity Origin Sin 2 at 2.79%. And in first, we have Dupes 25 Rampage Rapture from Dragon Quest VII Reimagined at a whopping 2.62%. That will bring us to the end of the rarity update for this week. Hopefully Discord will cooperate with me, and I will see you guys next week. Later.
And we're back. So hope you guys got something out of both those sections, because I certainly didn't. I don't know about you, but well, no, I do know about you guys. You applaud that kind of stuff. I, on the other hand, love it for the sake of the game. But speaking of the games, Alex, you want to talk about what you've been playing in our time away?
Well, I guess it's been about 3 weeks since anyone's heard my voice. Maybe. I can't remember. I wasn't on 2 shows, so... actually, no, I wasn't on 3 shows, because you all did a show without me, and then we missed the last 2 weeks, so... I recently have been playing more of the live service stuff, like Rocket League and Helldivers. Helldivers has released, in the last couple months, 3 war bonds, and that's really kind of, like, gummed up the works a bit. And now, like, with everything going on in life, I kind of have appreciated being able to just mindlessly farm super credits and medals, war bond medals in Helldivers 2, just to be able to, put towards the new stuff that they've included in the game. So that has been a nice diversion from life. But I do have a platinum trophy in that time. I'm just kind of figured out what I need to play, or what I want to play. I shouldn't say what I need to play, but what I want to play now that is out of the way. But one of the last PlayStation Plus free games from last month, Epic Mickey Rebrushed, and got the platinum trophy in that. Not at all a difficult platinum, although heads up, you will have to play the game twice. So what I'm going to say is going to make it sound like an insult, but this game is very much an unremarkable 3D platformer and adventure game. And I don't mean that to dissuade anyone from playing the game, because again, if you have PlayStation Plus and you were able to add to your library, you have, as long as you're a subscriber, you have free access to it. So, or you don't, at least beyond your subscription pay, you don't need to pay anything more to access the game. But my main reason for playing the game, I had played it back on the Wii when it originally came out many, many years ago. And I wanted just to see, well, now there's trophies to the game, so that's an added plus. But also, I just wanted to see, it's one of those games you hadn't played in so long, you want to go back and just see how well it's aged and everything like that. So, I will say that if you have access to it, it's worth playing. Very much for, not specifically for the actual gameplay, because the gameplay is fine at best, but like, it's, so the main reason you're going to want to play the game is for the nostalgia of it. And this focuses on Disney and Mickey Mouse and Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, long before the whole, the last, like, 15 or so or 10 or so years of people starting to grumble in the direction of Disney, people, taking very political shots at Disney, but also Disney having Star Wars and Marvel, and in a lot of ways kind of ruining people's enjoyment of those with what they put on, their streaming services, what they put in the movie theaters. So I feel like Disney in recent years has come under fire a lot. Some of it warranted, some of it not warranted. But this harkens back to a time when we were growing up, where you just, like, really, really as a kid enjoyed Disney. Like, there's the old Mickey Mouse cartoons that they turn into 2D platforming levels. There's the references throughout the game to things like the Nautilus from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, or to Space Mountain and the Haunted Mansion and Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, there's just a ton of different references to rides at the theme parks, as well as old movies and old cartoons that, if you grew up, in the 80s and 90s, it's hard not to smile when you see those in the game. So that's pretty much, for my money, the reason to play this game, is to see all that stuff. The platforming and all that, the gameplay it's meh. It's not terrible. It's not great. It's not the reason you want to play this game. The 2D platforming levels, they're very easy. They're not difficult. The whole game in general is pretty easy. Not that anyone goes into Epic Mickey expecting anything difficult, but like the collectibles in the 2D side-scrolling sections, very much like, you know how you go into a game, Matt, and you see a waterfall and you're like, I better check behind that waterfall because there's probably something back there.
Always.
We've been conditioned to do things to find secrets and collectibles in games. And in like the 2D platforming sections, once you're dropped into it, immediately walk to your left off screen and there's like a collectible there. And then go all the way to the right past the projector screen, which exits you to another area of the world, and there's a collectible beyond that. Very easily, very well. Just you know where to look for all the collectibles. And then gameplay wise, like the end of the game really drags. Like the pacing's not terrible, but the end of the game, the last 2 hours, is just a drag. It's not a lot of fun. It's annoying. They could have cut a lot of fat out of that. And so that's a little bit annoying. But also you have to play the game twice because the game has a paint and thinner mechanic. Mickey Mouse has a brush, and the paint is basically restore the world, build, create, and the thinner is destroy. And so your good and bad playthroughs reflect on whether you use thinner at certain sections or whether you use paint. The only problem is that for most of the game, the world around you doesn't change a ton, and the whole experience doesn't change very much for it to warrant a good and bad playthrough. So, it's not like Infamous where you are very much wrangled into which powers you're going to use and, hurting mobs of people and not caring where civilians are when you're on your evil Cole through playthrough. And then on the good playthrough, you use totally different powers and you avoid people. There's just not that much of a difference in this. The one example is in the, there is a Ventureland section, which is like pirates, Captain Hook, Smee, all that. And there's a robotic, Captain Hook, which is the boss of that area, and he, you can either, it's one of those things where you can climb up to the mast, to the top of the ship to free a Peter Pan sprite, and it's not Peter Pan, it's like Pete, you remember Pete the Cat, Big Pete, all that from Disney, Mickey Mouse. If you saw him, you would recognize him. But he's dressed up as Peter Pan, and you can free him and he'll fight Hook for you. That's the good path. The bad path is that you use the thinner to destroy Captain Hook, and one of the ways you can destroy him, there are a couple different ways, but you can set it up to where he walks the plank right into the jaws of a robotic crocodile. So that fight in particular is one where it's very, very different based on which path. Like, it's one of the neat examples of what they could do with paint thinner, but most of the game doesn't play out that way. Like, with the boss before that is again, a version of Pete, but it's Pete-tronic, so it's like Tron, but with Pete, and you either fill his little backpack with paint or thinner, and so either you befriend him or you destroy him, but after that, you don't see him again. So it's like, regardless of what you choose, it really doesn't matter. So the Captain Hook is the one example where the paint and thinner thing actually matters. But, I mean, overall, if you've got access to it, it's worth playing. If you never played it, it's worth playing. Just kind of, the game's not going to blow you away. Again, it's a remake of a game that's, 15 or so years old. So just set your expectations, decently enough. But understand you'll have to do 2 playthroughs, and it's an easy platinum though. So if you're a platinum hunter, if you're a trophy hunter, you shouldn't have any trouble with this. But I'm not saying go out and spend the money on this game, but if you got PlayStation Plus, you should play it, and you should because you have access to it anyway. So yeah, give it a try, see what you think. But for me, the experience, I had issues with the camera. I think on the Wii game, I think the camera is better in this version, but overall the game itself is just, there's a lot of nostalgia packed in, which is nice, but the gameplay just isn't like remarkable. It's just, it's not what's gonna be the most enjoyable part.
I remember when Epic Mickey was first announced, I remember reading the it probably was Electronic Gaming Monthly back then, but there was such a hoopla over they were actually making a Mickey game, and it was on such, obviously one of the first IPs he was in, and how it was such a big deal. Then, like, the second game kind of came and went without much fanfare, but it seems to have a little bit of extra life coming on in these late years. I don't know. I've just never been a Mickey fan. Like, I've never been fiending to play a game with Mickey Mouse in it, but if it caught your attention for a while, I guess that's a good thing.
I mean, this game was originally done. It was when Disney was doing their game studio stuff, like around like Split Second and all that. the game, it was a big deal when it came out because it was made by Warren Spector and Junction Point. Now we all know that later on, these studios would close. BlackRock, who made Split Second, these studios would close, and Disney would cut off their video game arm pretty much, and I guess license that stuff out instead of having in-house stuff that's made by them. But yeah, when this game came out, it was a big deal. And I played the first game. I didn't play Epic Mickey 2, and I guess part of the reason because Disney, after, I think it was before Epic Mickey 2, had kind of divested from making games, or at least making games in-house. So, like, as a game player, like, why am I going to get invested in this when Disney obviously doesn't want to deal with it, doesn't see a future in it for them? So, yeah, I never played Epic Mickey 2. But in general, I think that it's good to form your own opinions about games, because I don't always agree with everything that's said about games I play. I don't always, disagree either. But, for a game like this, I think that there's enjoyment to be had, but it's not necessarily for the reason that you always think, And I don't think you have to be a Disney adult or anything like that to enjoy this game. I think there's an appreciation that you can have for, say, like the Haunted Mansion section of it that, you should be, fine with. Like I said, there's fun to be had here, but just set your expectations appropriately, which is an important lesson for life.
Okay.
Matt, while I am looking for something new to play, sir, what have you been up to?
I'm going to say that's all you really put your time in?
Yeah, I mean, Epic Mickey 2 playthroughs, it took me about 23 hours, I think. 6 hours for the second playthrough, 16, 17 for the first playthrough. Keep in mind, the second playthrough, I wasn't, like, doing any side missions or anything like that, like looking for collectibles all that hard. It was basically a straight shot through using the thinner. But yeah, other than that, my live service stuff, which, everybody knows about it by this point. So, yeah, that's really all I've been playing. They've got a new sale up on PSN, which I've been looking through that and keeping my eye open, given that I still have Turkey's Christmas money to spend.
Okay. Yeah, mine was already, well, gone and spent, so.
Just blowing it all, Matt.
Usually, because the funny thing is, I don't think we talked about it back when he did it, but he goes, I thanked him for the Steam gift card. He goes, I don't know what you're talking about. I sent you a PSN gift card and it must have auto converted or something. I don't know. But,
autocorrect. Yeah. What did you end up buying with your funds?
Actually, Battlefield 6 at the time, because it was on sale during the Steam sale and it was well within the price range. So I've had fun with that. But that actually is not what I played during my 2 weeks of not being at my computer. So I played a little bit more of Moonlighter, The Endless Vault. Moonlighter 2, The Endless Vault, I should say. It's the second game of the series. And I've been having fun with it. It's definitely a change from the first, but I haven't put much time into that. I got back into Monster Hunter Wilds pretty viciously. For those of you who don't know, the game has what's called a desire sensor, meaning as you kill monsters, you want a very specific part. Well, I'm trying to get this very specific part with a 1 to 2% drop rate chance, and I've bashed this monster over the head dozens, if not hundreds of times now, and I still have not gotten this damn item to drop. So I'm going to have to continue my engagement of this monster to try to get what I need for the weapon I'm making. There was a Nintendo Direct. We didn't actually talk. It's not on the news this week, but they did drop the Monster Hunter Stories 3 Twisted Reflection demo on all the platforms this past week. So I actually gave that download, and I'm very excited to say it's definitely more of Monster Hunter Stories. If you played that and you liked it. For those of you who don't know, it's a Pokemon-like, where you're going around, you're collecting monsters, adding them to your party, and you're fighting monsters using a very basic rock, paper, scissors type battle system. It's even more simplified. They say like Pokemon, it's a rock, paper, scissors, where it's more like rock, paper, scissors, poison, electricity, flying, all sorts of different combos. The Monster Hunter Stories literally is a rock, paper, scissors of speed, power, and technical, and one beats the other throughout the matchup. However, the way that they change it up is the monsters you fight change their tactics mid-fight, and you have to figure out which one they're going to use. So as a result, you're fighting a monster. Maybe you use speed to beat their power, and then mid-fight they enrage, and you have to figure out, all right, do they change to tactical or speed at that point? But the demo allows you to go through the character creator, explore a fairly large section of the open world, takes you through the tutorial battles, some additional odds and ends, but it really is a good slice of the pie of what to expect from this game. And it comes out in March, so that's going to definitely be the one thing I pick up that month. I also put a little, not much, but a little time into Lego Horizon Adventures, playing an additional couple levels. And I could say the game is very well put together. I don't know how enthused I am about it, and maybe you could tell me, Alex, because every time I play it, I go, I should just be playing Horizon. Like, I don't know. I feel like I should just play the game it came from.
What I don't know. What about I'm like, sorry, I had to let one of the cats in, or I had to let Cosmo
Okay.
in. But I'm assuming you're talking about Lego Horizon Adventures and kind of just your experience with that.
Yes, exactly. I just said that every time I play it, I'm kind of like, I kind of just want to play the original Lego,
Well, it
or
gets
the
really
original
old.
Horizon.
It gets really old because there's like 4 different sections of the game, and you're like, as you go through, and maybe you feel differently, but I felt like it was like the same thing every time you go through, except for the miscellaneous cauldron thrown out here and there. But it just felt like a straight shot to the end, and then you fought a group of people or a machine, and that was it. Like, it just felt like the same thing over and over again. Is that how you feel, or what is
Yeah.
driving you away from it?
Yeah, well, it's I expect the simplicity of a Lego game, and I don't know, maybe it's still I'm too early on, but I'm used to the Star Wars Legos that it gets pretty. I don't want to say complex, but you got a bunch of different things you could do right off the bat using force powers and builds and ways to navigate the map. So I don't know, maybe it's just they don't have enough of a variety from the Horizon games to build something Lego wise, but it just feels very straightforward, I guess. And the combat hasn't been anything too difficult or too engaging, I guess. I guess I was expecting more in the combat. Let's see. I also put a little more time into Borderlands 4, expanded to the next region, but I've taken down the first of, I think, 3 or 4 bosses, so I'm moving on to the second one. I also put some time in as it relates to my buddy and I playing Gears of War Reloaded. We have started our Insane campaign run, as we are wont to do with this type of game. Pretty much we've beaten Gears of War 1 Insane on every version that's come out so far, so now we have to do it here. And I also put some time into Ball Pit, and I actually unlocked my next level. So that is now 4 levels I've unlocked. So I'm continuing my runs there, continuing to earn characters, harvest, and just enjoy. The game doesn't take long if you do have a good run. It's just like about 10, maybe 15 minutes on the run. It actually has a timer that you have. So definitely more time spent there. And then I also put more time into Ghost of Yotei, and I have put, according to my save file, 50 hours into this game now, and I just got to the start of chapter 2 of 3 today. I gotta wonder how much more the game opens up, but that's a lot of game for my money so far, and I'm happy with it. But I've unlocked all the weapons. I found all the shrines, all the wolves dens, all of the bamboo strikes in the region. So I have a feeling there's things that they're not showing me, and it's gonna show me and open up soon. So I'm just continue my enjoyment of the game. The game continues to be beautiful and plays very well. But the final game that I want to talk about today is Silent Hill F. I've actually, pulled up my bootstraps, I sat down, and I beat the game on what's supposed to be its first run through. For those of you who don't know, the F in Silent Hill, F evidently stands for 5 endings, because there are 5 different endings you can get for the game. And if you're wondering, the first time you play through, you will always get the same ending, meaning everybody gets the same ending the first time you beat it. And then after that, on your New Game Plus runs, what you do or where you go determines the other endings. And after you beat it one time, you get access to open up 2 other endings. And once you get at least 2 endings, then you get access to the third true ending. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, or I should say the 4th ending. And then there's a traditional Silent Hill UFO ending. Now, I played through the game in Japanese audio with English dubs, and I will say that's the way to play. The voice actors kill it in this game. And the themes of the game are deep, but maybe in some cases skin deep. Like they hit you over the head with the themes in some areas, but others I actually had to go look up afterwards, be like, well, what did that mean? What were we going there? But the game explores some mature themes as it relates to what it means to be a young female in 1960s Japan, and what it means and what is expected of you, and what happens if you're trying to rebel, and how are you facing friends who may not be who they say they are. And then developing the themes from there. And the monster design was wild and really, really detailed. I enjoyed how it fit into the theme of the game and the era. And, we're all sitting there and wondering, it's like, well, Silent Hill F, everybody was complaining, well, Silent Hill's a place it's been a place in all these games. So how are you setting up a game in Japan? What are the ties to Silent Hill? And this explains Silent Hill as more of a theme, the fog, the darkness, the light world, the dark world, as well as the mental anguish your protagonist goes through. So no direct link to the previous Silent Hills, but definitely thematically it hits all the notes of a Silent Hill game. So definitely give it a try. It's only like about 8 to 10 hours to beat it on the first run through. Other run throughs may take longer as you're trying to figure out what you need to do to get to the other endings, but definitely worth it, especially if it goes on sale. If you like horror games, if you like Silent Hill, we're waiting. Definitely give this one a try.
I feel like because I don't feel like that was the original intent for Silent Hill. I feel like Silent Hill was always a place. I feel like they have changed the canon now to make it so that they don't have to rely so much on a setting and can make other games based on just psychological effects. So, like, I don't know if I buy that so much, but it definitely seems like they just changed it up on the fly. And I could see how fans of the series might be like, whoa, what the fuck you... I mean, you're a fan of the series, so obviously you still enjoyed the game, but making it from, like, a place into, like, a state of mind is kind of like... You can make the argument, but it's harder to look at that way when you feel it's not the original intent, because this game series is, 20, 30 years old?
Yeah, but so I agree 100%. And I said throughout the entire game, they could have called this anything else but Silent Hill, and it would still be a good game. The issue is they had to say, well, now we're thematic. Silent Hill is a thematic place, a theme that we follow, because otherwise they wouldn't have been able to call this game Silent Hill. It really does irk me, because Silent Hill, compare it to Resident Evil. And Resident Evil originally was the mansion. Then it was Raccoon City. Then it was about the STARS team and Chris Redfield and Leon Kennedy and Jill Valentine. And then they just kept expanding from there. Silent Hill has always kind of been about the place with people around it. But also, I don't think it was the same Silent Hill in each game. Like, you could argue, since 1 and 3 are directly connected, that yes, it would be the same place. 2, not necessarily. 4 being the room, that's a whole other thing. Downpour being Shattered Memories was a remake of the first one, or kind of a reimagining of the first one. And then Downpour and Homecoming were kind of not in Silent Hill. So I think for them to make a Silent Hill game that doesn't take place in Silent Hill isn't actually too far off the map when you only got like a handful of games that actually feature the town as kind of the antagonist. So
It
I
does. It
think
does make me question though. Like, are you just basically trading on the Silent Hill name? It's like, oh, Silent Hill's been great for, especially since it's Konami, and we know how Konami here was really kind of like, when it comes to their video games and their famous franchises. I don't think anyone will sit here and say, yeah, there was a Castlevania collection, Legacy collection that came out, that I played a few years back that was really good, but with their mainline franchises, I don't think anyone's going to sit here and say that Konami's done a spectacular job outside of maybe some of the collections.
No, I agree. And the fact is this is a good Silent Hill game, a good Konami game. So it's like, okay, well, just do that. And I look at it and say, yeah, they made this change, and I'm really, it still kind of irks me. Maybe they could have called it something other than Silent Hill F, maybe some other subtitle under Silent Hill to make like a change. There is one stretch of a link, and it has to do with the flowers in the game, as well as what flowers were growing in the other games. And I think it's a weak connection at best, but I think that was Konami really trying to stretch to say, well, we're going to call it Silent Hill. There's definitely like this thing. So I don't know. I think with them shifting it to being a thematic concept, it's opens them up more to do different towns, so to speak, or different eras, different locales, but keep those same themes of personal hell and mental anguish. So I don't know. I would love to see them still go back to and do an actual new Silent Hill game. As you know, Bloober Team is working on a Silent Hill 1 remake, which I'll probably be there day one, but would be nice to see a brand new game set in the town of Silent Hill with some new characters. So that is what we've been playing. And as you all are aware, we've had some news over the past 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I guess, at this point. So we're going to cover some of the things we missed.
Matt, real quick before we move on, have you or V jumped back into checkout? Because one of the other things that came up over the break here that I took was the update for Animal Crossing. Obviously, this is a Switch game, but did you or V jump back into that and do any of the kind of like because one of the things they add is the hotel, and you design the hotel rooms for all the incoming guests. But did you all jump back into that at all?
It's actually funny that you mentioned that, because that is literally what V is playing right now. She has been playing it pretty much nonstop, except for a break she took to beat Final Fantasy Tactics Ivalice Chronicles, whatever that new one was. But she's been playing it pretty much nonstop. I'll sit on the couch. I'll be playing on the Steam Deck. She'll be playing on the TV, and she's showing me all the stuff that she's getting. So yeah, she's diving hardcore into the new Animal Crossing, and she made a whole new island to experience it again.
Dang, it was the first time in over 4 years I actually played that game. So
yeah, no, and from what I can see, the update's pretty much worth it, and she's having a lot of fun with it.
Hey, updates are better when they're free.
That is true. Speaking of free, PlayStation Plus monthly games. See, you like that transition? Good job. PlayStation Plus monthly games for February. By the time you're listening to this, obviously you'll probably be aware. However, it's our duty to report on the news, and releasing is Undisputed for the PS5, Subnautica Below Zero for the PS4 and PS5, Ultros for the PS4 and PS5, and Ace Combat 7 Skies Unknown. That comes with the basic tier of PlayStation Plus. Now, I've played some Ace Combat 7, really great game. I've played a little bit of the base level of Subnautica. Undisputed is a boxing game, and Ultros is, it says here, grounded in science fiction, comes wrapped in both eccentric art style from the visionary El Huervo, renowned for his work on Hotline Miami. Don't really know much about it. Did you grab any of these when they came up, Alex?
The new PlayStation Plus games, not Hotline Miami?
Yes, correct.
So the only one that I'm looking at, I'm not a big Ace Combat 7 proponent because like the flying games, like Warhawk's really the one game, and if you want to stretch back to the NES, Top Gun, which I was never good at, so maybe that was a very early villain origin story to where I couldn't land on the fucking aircraft carrier, so I was just, maybe that's part of where my inner rage comes from these days, is from the Top Gun on the NES. But Ace Combat, not saying it's a bad game, but just the flying games, whether arcade or simulator, I'm just not a fan of. I don't really recognize any of the rest of this, except for Subnautica Below Zero. Obviously, I got the Platinum Trophy in Subnautica last year and kind of struggled my way early on through that game. Had fun with it by the end because I had figured everything out and I collected enough resources to basically build my base and build the vehicles and just enjoy the experience, just dig around in it, and have more fun with it. So Subnautica Below Zero as a PlayStation Plus free game, or monthly game, I should say, because you always got to remember you do have to pay a subscription fee for that, so I want to get away from calling them free, but that may be a game that I check out. I know I've had people tell me that it's a lot like Subnautica where they don't give you a lot of clues at the beginning, but I do know it's a shorter experience, so I think that maybe, maybe struggle at the beginning, but maybe it'll be a worthwhile experience like Subnautica in the end. So Subnautica Below Zero might be a game that I check out.
Okay. And, Ace Combat 7's an interesting time because they recently announced Ace Combat 8, Wings of Thief, I think it was called. So definitely, if you haven't looked at Ace Combat games before, Ace Combat 7's a fantastic game. And it is an arcade style flight sim, and I use sim very loosely. So it's a good time. And then, yeah, like I said, Subnautica, base building, exploration, open world, underwater with sea monsters. So hopefully you don't have thalassophobia, because certainly deep dark ocean is a problem.
I think to some degree everyone has thalassophobia, because you cannot tell me that you may not be afraid of the water, but seeing some of the videos people put out there with the Kraken and like Godzilla and Cthulhu and all these giant monsters, the Bloop, El Grand Maha, there's no possible way that you look at this, because on land you can see shit, what's there. Under the water you don't know what's swimming 100 feet below you. So to some degree, I think people have some fear of the water, because we fear the unknown. And that's the very definition of the ocean. It covers most of the planet, and you don't know what the fuck is under there.
And I think the big thing that catches you is because as you're swimming and you can't see under you, like you said, above ground, you can kind of see. I see that bear, I know to run. I don't know
whether you could get away. I don't know if running is the best idea, but
I'll die tired, but at least I have a chance. When it's the water and you can't see the giant sea monster under you, and it just decides your lunch today, you can't help it. It's those and the videos of the scuba divers going into very tight spaces that I have to turn those videos off. I can't watch that shit.
Yeah, so there's a reason why I have never been devoured by a shark. It's because I don't go to places where sharks can kill me. I will gladly, the beach is fine, but I will gladly just go to a heated pool and swim in the pool. I don't need to go out into the ocean, sailing or anything like that and possibly get eaten by a monster. I don't know. There's a reason that doesn't happen, because I don't put myself in that position.
It always gets to me. I always say it during Shark Week. It comes up on my memory every year. It's like beachgoers were surprised when young man was eaten by a shark. I said, well, the surprise would actually be if, the shark jumped up onto the beach and ate somebody. If he's in the water, it's one of the things that could happen.
Yeah, I understand people enjoy surfing and they get a thrill from that. But is the thrill worth, your experience of surfing worth possibly getting painfully devoured by a large animal? And
I think the rarity of it happening.
Yeah, no, I know that sharks generally are not, we're not their first choice for food, but when there is a possibility that a shark, which is larger than any human, some of these sharks are 25 feet long, 20 feet long, and aggressive and powerful, when there is that chance, even if there's like a 1% chance, I don't give a shit. I'm not going to be there.
I don't even
Like I
think
said-
we're the last choice of food. It's mostly they mistake us for something.
Well, yeah,
they do
agreed.
eat.
But you know what? You know what my chance of being eaten by a shark is at a pool at a resort while I'm eating food or having a nice beverage? You know what the chances of that are of that?
I'm thinking it's 0.
It's 0, and I'll take 0 over 1% every fucking time.
All right. Speaking of percentages and ratios, coming from Variety, they brought a report out that said 1/3 of U.S. video game industry workers were laid off over the last 2 years, the GEC study reveals. So, a response from more than 2,300 gaming industry professionals with surveys customized for each participant group found that 33% of respondents in the U.S. were laid off. So, 2,300 gaming industry professionals. Hard to say whether or not that's a relevantly, what's the word I'm looking for? Representative statistic, because I don't know how many actual gaming professionals there are across the US, but it's still shocking that in a survey where you're just gathering 2,300 people, that 33% of them said that they were laid off in the last year. And it brings up a very interesting thing. I don't know. Have you ever seen Linus Tech Tips on YouTube?
No, I have not.
Okay. Linus Tech Tips is a tech-inspired YouTube channel featuring reviews, builds, technology improvement, things like that. Well, recently, one of his employees had come up with his own YouTube channel, or his former employee, I should say, who left back in August. And one of the things he blatantly said was, it's hard to continue working at a place where I'm now building a tech thing for my boss's third home, and I'm wondering if I'm ever going to afford mine. And I look at the tech industry and as a whole, but gaming specifically, that you hear about all these profits and all these things, and in many cases games not making their goals, but these presidents and CEOs and everything are still making bank. And then you get these programmers, whether they're quality assurance specialists or programmers or people in marketing, just getting laid off left and right because there's such a disparity between the upper levels of the game development and the people actually doing the work and the grunts. So I don't know. I look at this and say, I think we're still going to be facing more and more. I think one studio recently just had a game canceled and shut down. So you're going to be seeing more and more of it come out as some game developers just are very allergic to risk. And I think I was listening to a Geek Enders podcast where you were hearing about that, where Ubisoft can't risk games that may not be revenue generating. And I think we skipped over some of the articles that happened because Ubisoft had a bunch of closures recently and canceled games, yet they still are saying Beyond Good and Evil 2 is in development. Like, I don't know. Make it make sense, Alex.
I don't think you can. I mean, you can make sense of the situation, maybe not at Ubisoft, but you can make sense of the situation where you can see how so many of these layoffs have happened. I mean, you think about video games being a big business and generate a lot of revenue and being a very popular form of entertainment, a very popular hobby for a lot of people, following in the wake of, I mean, it's always been a popular hobby, but the growth that was experienced during the pandemic and, people, projects, AAA projects being very large these days, requiring a lot more money to put out. And, just beyond making the game, people in marketing, all the people it takes to run these companies and make these games. And, companies, not always exercising the most caution when it comes to this stuff and not always forecasting super well. So you can make sense of the layoffs, and given how many layoff stories there have been, of what we've seen reported, what we don't see on the day-to-day, and understanding just in general that when, projects are done, people are, not renewed or let go or however that happens. But it doesn't. The number may seem ridiculous, but after all we've talked about this for the last 3 years, I can't say that I'm really all that surprised. So, and just the way individual companies are run, there's a reason why certain companies are in the position they're in, and you can't always explain it. You can't always, and you see the logic in it, but also you can see that sometimes game companies refuse to change, or to future-proof themselves, or they're stuck in their ways and they keep doing the same thing they've always done, and or they bet too big on a project and it doesn't hit. So, yeah, hopefully that gave you some insight. But I mean, the numbers may seem ridiculous, but I don't think anyone's surprised given how much of a topic, how much has been reported, and just how in the media it's been that layoffs and studio closures have been such a big chunk of the news in recent years.
Well, let's hope it's less and less as we move along.
And I think that honestly, specifically, like Beyond Good and Evil 2, if Ubisoft wanted to get that game out, they could. You'll never convince me that game. I don't know what's going on. But I honestly think that if they really wanted to push that game out, all they would have to do is put more manpower behind it. They could get it out. It's been enough time where they could get that game out if they really wanted to. So I don't know what the holdup is, but obviously if they're not really concerned about getting it out anytime soon, and maybe they figure
we shouldn't be concerned.
Well, maybe as long as they figure they give updates and confirm it's still a thing, that they figure that the Beyond Good and Evil fans will be satisfied with that, as long as they don't outright cancel it. But the Beyond Good and Evil fans aren't a big enough audience to really worry about, like not to really sway their financials one way or the other. Because I'll say this, and maybe it's a hot take, I played the original Beyond Good and Evil. I know it's a cult hit. Personally, I don't think it's that good. I think it's overrated. That's just me, though. Now, am I saying that Beyond Good and Evil 2 couldn't be better, or couldn't be a big hit, or that it shouldn't come out? No. I think it should. I would like to see it come out. I would like to see what kind of game comes out. But with Beyond Good and Evil being a cult hit more than anything, I think that maybe makes Ubisoft look at it differently than, say, something like Assassin's Creed, where they have to get these games out by a certain point. Beyond Good and Evil 2, they could maybe obviously feel like they can take their time with, because it's, like I said, it's not out yet. But they also haven't canceled it, so...
It just, that's where it gets me, is because you sit there and go, well, if they're hurting for money, if they're worried about spending money on things that won't be a return on investment, I'm not understanding how Beyond Good and Evil 2 is going to be a return on investment for them, given how much time and money has already been spent. And I say that not knowing what they've spent.
Maybe it's just the team is so small that they're like, yeah, whatever. It's not like an Assassin's Creed, 500 plus person project. But
yeah,
I think that, it makes you see how they view the franchise, because if they saw any kind of profitability in it, or if they saw it as a big time hit, it would have been pushed out by now. But it's just kind of one of those things they keep on the back burner, and whether we ever see it is remains to be seen. But companies, you'll see when companies, despite what you read on YouTube, despite what you see on social media, despite how loud people scream for a new Sly Cooper or a new Twisted Metal, you see companies' priorities in the games that they put out. So, obviously, Beyond Good and Evil is not a high priority, so I would imagine the team is not very big. I imagine it's a smaller team.
Which would make sense, that they kind of are given not carte blanche, but maybe definitely, arm's length room to figure out how they're going to make this a game that holds up to people's standards of the original.
And despite the fact that I think that, canceling a Assassin's Creed game would be more of a financial hit for Ubisoft, the amount of shit they would take for canceling Beyond Good and Evil 2 or announcing that versus an Assassin's Creed game, I think the voices in the comments and on social media would be a lot more. Like, you would see more pushback from Beyond Good and Evil 2 than an Assassin's Creed game. One, probably because Assassin's Creed, we've had so many of those games, and people are feeling like, they feel like there's a fatigue at this point, and they kind of very much seem to be running around in circles with that game series. Beyond Good and Evil 2, people have been waiting so long, and like, generally with cult hits, like, people are very vocal about their love for it, so I think Ubisoft, if they know they canceled that game, there would be just one. It would look like an abject failure. You had so many years to get this game out, and you had untold resources to put behind this game, and you couldn't, like, the amount of pushback they would get from that failure, I think would be worse than canceling any Assassin's Creed game.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. So the next thing on our list to talk about here is, that big, huge, popular game Dispatch?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. I know you and Tricky have been playing it.
Yeah, well, it's a very mature themed superhero game, and it came to Nintendo Switch recently. And people were surprised to find that the things like nudity have been black boxed and censored. And while that in and of itself is not surprising, the option to turn censorship off is not present in the game on Nintendo Switch. And this caught a lot of people off guard. They bought the game and were surprised that they couldn't turn it off. And then, they started beating up Nintendo. But what actually happened was Ad Hoc Studios came out and said, this wasn't necessarily Nintendo's doing, but basically we had to submit to an independent game rating organization and in order to post onto Nintendo systems, and they thought because of games like Witcher 3 with all of its themes and nudity were on it that it wouldn't be a problem. Well, evidently it was. So Ad Hoc decided to do the censorship thing to meet the requirements, and they said that we weren't trying to hide it. We're sorry that we didn't do much of a campaign to tell you, but we did put a disclaimer right up front when you launch the game. Maybe we should have done more to actually let you know ahead of time. So, my discussion point here isn't so much that it's the censorship, it's that it's a mandatory censorship. You can't toggle the system on or off on Nintendo. So I don't know. It's to me, I don't like choices being forced to me as the player. And the things that are in the game, I've played through it. I've seen the things. And frankly, I think the biggest offender that they have is, essentially it's a male penis, but since it's a super villain, it's like, how do I say this? Not exactly defined, I guess, from an image perspective. So I don't know. Like I said, it's just forcing choice on the players to me is never a good thing.
Me personally, I think you always have to remember, like, you shouldn't be shocked about this. I mean, even back when we were growing up, Nintendo, like, where's the famous, like, Mortal Kombat on Genesis had blood, Mortal Kombat on SNES didn't have blood. So Nintendo always, I mean, we can get into the argument of Nintendo being the more family-friendly console, except when it comes to prices and potential future price increases of the Switch 2, which have not been announced yet, but, after recent comments from Nintendo brass, not completely out of the question. So we can talk about family-friendly in various aspects, but I think in this, as far as, like, nudity in games, like, there needs to be a mature audience that can handle it. And I think that you can't always rely on parents to do what's best for their kids, because sometimes stuff slips through the cracks and parents don't always pay attention. I mean, that's, again, on the parents, not on Nintendo or these companies, but there is obviously a feeling from the studio that we had to do this, specifically on this console. I can't blame them for that, because, again, Nintendo's audience has been more family-friendly, a better place for kids to play, and third parties just haven't always been the priority there. And you've always seemingly gotten a kind of more watered-down experience when it comes to Nintendo on, when it comes to most third-party games on their console. So, I mean, obviously censorship is a big thing, especially when it comes to not necessarily, like, language, but more so nudity. Here in the US, there is a lot of conversation around political correctness and like when it comes to religion and expectations for violence in media, there things are more allowed in movies and TV. Like you're more likely to see violence than nudity because people are more offended by nudity, and that just comes from the makeup of the country. So it doesn't surprise me that you can't make the choice in this specifically Nintendo version of the game, that it's kind of just the decision made for you and it's kind of blocked out and censored. I can understand why people want the decision, but again, Nintendo third-party games, it's always a worse experience, almost always. I mean, smaller indie titles, that's different, but when it comes to bigger games, like, Nintendo's just not the console you want to play it on. And if you want choice, you should know by now that you're gonna have to play on another console. Like, I don't know, maybe that it's a shitty statement by me to make, Matt, but none of this surprises me whatsoever.
I think the challenge point, and it's not so much shitty, it's just I think sometimes we assume everybody has access to all the consoles, and in some cases, there's some parents out there, like one of my best friends, the only game system other than his PC, which he doesn't get to play on very often, is his Nintendo Switch. So if he wants to play something like Dispatch, other than being stuck at a PC, which he can't do, not with the kids he has, it may be on his Switch in his work truck while he's waiting for calls. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, think about like all the times that we've heard stories about GameStop employees being yelled at by parents because the parents bought a game for their kids that they shouldn't have. And it just goes back to the reason this stuff happens is because game makers and publishers and all that feel like they have to because they can't allow children or to see certain things that are in games. It's on the parents, but it's not on the parents because so often parents want to push off all their responsibility on someone else. That's not every parent, but we do hear stories where parents are angry because they bought the game, because they didn't pay attention, because they don't know what's going on with their kids. So obviously there's a feeling by some companies that, hey, you have to do these things in order to get on this console or be published by this company, or not have backlash when someone sees a naked penis, undefined or not, in your video game. And I think it comes down to the fact that there is an understanding that you have to, at the very publisher level or the developer level, protect children when that's not your responsibility, so to speak.
Yeah, no, and you're going to do it to mitigate any potential fallout you get.
And I should definitely, I want to say that I do not think that people who own Nintendo consoles deserve a watered down experience, but I do think that has become the thing. Because they're just not, it's not just the expectations when it comes to the audience that own or has access to the console, but it's also the fact that the technology just is, I mean, could Nintendo make a console that is as advanced as the PS5 or the Xbox One? The Xbox Series X or S? Sure. But
I don't even think it's a technical thing, or capability. I just think you never know which way Nintendo's going to go with some of these things. Like, they've got freaking hentai games, basically, for lack of a better term, on their system available.
But are those like Japan only, or available in Japan and not the US?
I mean, hell, I can probably pull up my Switch store here in a second and find some really interesting stuff.
Pull up your library there, huh, Matt? Your downloads, right?
Yeah. I said store, Alex, not my library.
Yeah,
thanks for putting so much faith in me.
Not. It's not about me. I'm talking about a friend of mine. I'm not asking for a friend.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no. So I think it's which way is Nintendo going to lean legally this week? Because it's always a catch. Like I said, is they have Witcher 3, which has, topless women in it and pretty wanton gore and violence. So I don't know.
But also, the studio that made Dispatch, you said it's ad hoc, right?
Yeah.
Smaller studio than CD Projekt Red, correct?
You could say that, yeah.
A smaller studio, CD Projekt Red, they, as we've seen, survived all like the release stuff with Cyberpunk, and they're fine. So they could survive things that another company could not. A smaller studio isn't going to deal with that hassle. They're just trying to get on Nintendo, and their game is successful, so why would they want to rock the boat?
Yeah. Okay. Just typing in the word hentai gives us hentai girls, hentai secrets, romantic charm, hentai shop simulator, hentai parody, tentacle slayer, passion puzzle, hentai maidens, hentai games collection volume 2, hentai waifu 5. I don't know. It just
We
it's
have
weird.
a listener that's really glad that you named out all these games so they don't have to go add that to their search function. They can just, well, I guess you would still have to search for it, but you just did someone a real solid by naming out all those games.
Well, when Tricky buys them for, I mean, when that anonymous listener buys them. All right, we got to move on. We got to keep the show running.
Hey, if they're easy platinum, well, actually, no, that'd be on Nintendo. So
It's
I
a
mean,
Nintendo, so no. Obviously,
well,
Tricky won't get them.
it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, Sony's a Japanese company. I'm not going to go look up those games, but would we be surprised if those games are on the PlayStation as well?
They probably would be. All right. Speaking of multiple systems, I got a couple different articles here before we move on to listener questions called sales numbers. So basically, this is just kind of the outlook and some of the things that we've said over the past couple months. But Nintendo acknowledges Switch 2 sales have been slightly weaker than expected outside of Japan. So, coming from IGN, they talked about the forecasted global hardware and software sales. Their volume remains unchanged, but that sales for the Switch 2 in Japan were actually good. They beat out the Switch 1, but that the US Switch 2 sales over the holiday period were down 35% in the UK or the US versus the Switch 1, and it's also lagging 16% in the UK. But they were over in Japan by I think like over 30% for the same period time. So, that coupled with the Switch 1 sales topping 155 million, we're getting close to that goalpost that Papa Jimmy Ryan set a couple years back. That it's interesting that the Switch 1 is still selling. And this was kind of the big question I know maybe some of my co-hosts had was, well, with the Switch 2, it's Nintendo officially killing the Switch 1 sales. Well, that doesn't seem to be the case. And I think people may be going and especially with the potential increase of price of the Switch 2 in the future, though there was another article I read that Nintendo is working their butts off to acquire a significant portion of RAM and other hardware so that way they don't have to worry about increasing the price on the Switch 2. But the Switch 1 continues to sell. And then you look at this final article where PS5 shipments have topped 92.2 million units since launch as of December 31st, 2025. And on top of that, Sony has made at least $2.3 billion selling first-party games on PC and Xbox. So I think this is, you kind of got two things going on here. One, the PS5, which has been out for 5 years now, selling close to 100 million units in that time period. So I think they're eventually going to shoot above that 155 million mark that Nintendo just did with the Switch OG, which has been out only 3 or 4 years prior to the PS5 launching. And Sony finding homes on other systems for their first party games, making a ton of money. So, I'll be the first one to admit that, I've kind of been, you too, Alex, to some extent, have been championing the Nintendo aspect on this show where Tricky may have been a little more negative on the whole prospect. But I think this is clearly showing that despite it being the most successful console launch in history, the Switch 2 sales have been kind of lagging recently. And maybe it's because there aren't any additional killer apps. When it comes to Nintendo first-party games, you got Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, and that's basically it. Everything else has been kind of a upgrade from past games. So I think the Switch 2 has some ground to make up, at least on the software side, to make up those sales that maybe aren't matching what the Switch 1 was. That said, in this time period, Switch 2 has outsold the lifetime sales of the Wii U. So at least it's not that much of a failure. What do you think, Alex?
I think there are numerous reasons. I mean, the technology is there. The Switch 2, I think people will get behind, but there, it's not. It's not like the console is a failure and they can't do anything to get sales up in the West. There are things they could do. We have the Zelda 40th anniversary coming up. There are definitely things they could do with that, which they failed to do with the 35th anniversary, that could definitely jumpstart sales. All you'd have to do is announce a new Super Smash Bros. Game, and you'd be fine. A new 3D Mario or a new 3D Zelda, these are all things they could do to just immediately, like, people would go out and buy systems in droves. I think part of the problem is, one, you have bet on, you mentioned their games, and from what I have read, Mario Kart, I'm not saying it's a bad game, but it seems like it fell off really early. Donkey
Being
Kong,
$90 didn't help either.
Donkey Kong is not even if they make good games, it's not one of your premier mascots. Let's be real, he's not on the same level as a Link or Zelda or Mario. It's just not, he's not. So while the hardcore gamer may appreciate the game, he's not a mainstream success. When especially with third parties not being as visible on the Switch or not having as many third party options on the Switch, you Nintendo's expecting their games, their Nintendo owned and published games, to make more money and to sell lots of units. And Donkey Kong may be a really good game, but it's not going to be one of those mascots that turns as many heads as a Mario or a Link. So I also think that relying on previously released third-party games is not a great look for the system. And let's be real, there's a lot of Switch 2 upgraded games. There's a Switch 2 upgrade for Animal Crossing, yet there's not a new Animal Crossing 6 years after Animal Crossing New Horizons came out. You've got the upgrades for Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild when they were just released on the previous console. I think there's also a Switch 2 upgrade for Donkey Kong Returns, right?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure, but basically the point is there's a lot of Switch 2 versions of Switch games. So why? We chastise Sony for doing the re-release of all the Naughty Dog games, the remakes, the remasters, which they deserve. But also, I think Nintendo, part of their problem is, Nintendo to me comes across as really lazy this generation. Why do you not have a new Animal Crossing ready to go? 6 years. Plenty of time. And let's be real, with no significant... They supported the game afterwards, doing events and stuff like that. Added some new content. But 6 years later, you should have a new Animal Crossing ready to go. I know we just got a Kirby game, so that's going to limit what, Sakurai does with Smash Brothers. I understand that. But there's been enough time where they should have put out more first-party stuff. Because that's really why people are not buying a Switch to play third-party games. They're buying them to play the first-party games, and then if they get good third-party games, they will buy those too. But I just think that Nintendo's issues are in their lack of support for the Switch. I mean, look, I know Mario Tennis Fever's coming out. Nobody cares. I'm sorry. That's not a game that's going to sell systems. And they've had, Pokemon Legends, and I know Pokemon is super over. It sells really well, but the Pokemon Legends games don't sell as well as the mainline games, which eventually Pokemon Gen 10 will come out, and they will sell a lot. But Mario Party Jamboree, another example of a Switch 2 version of the game, came out on the Switch a couple years ago, and there's already a Switch 2 version. Why? So I think I think Nintendo's problems are relying on previously released third-party games, Switch 2 versions of games we had last generation, and just general laziness. I think that's really the problem for Nintendo. I think that for some people, the price increase will put them off. But if you put out games people really wanted to play, you would get people to buy the console. I don't know, Matt. I don't want to I probably come across as a Nintendo or a Switch 2 hater, but for me personally, someone who... I've owned every Nintendo console except for the Wii U. And I'm just I'm not... No. I go into the store and I see it. I'm I'm not fucking buying this thing.
No, even I said it, I'll say it when I am faced with new evidence, and I'm saying, other than Donkey Kong, Mario Kart World, Metroid Prime 4 is available on both the Switch and Switch 2, and it's this is a game people waited decades over a decade for. And is it worth the time? It's a good game. Not maybe a decade's worth of development for it. And Nintendo has some grounds to make up. And we watched the Switch Direct. It was their partner Direct, so third-party games, exactly what you were just talking about. And they're sitting there and announcing Resident Evil Requiem on it. And I'm looking at it going, god damn, like if it's your only console and you really love Resident Evil and you're playing it, okay, I get it. But I'm looking at it going, this is another Mortal Kombat 11 situation where it looks horrible compared to the other systems that it's coming out on. So yeah, Nintendo, like, what were your teams doing? Like, what is the Mario Odyssey team doing that you don't have another one at least announced by now? Zelda Tears of the Kingdom was a Switch ender. So like, yeah, it's going to take them time to put another one out. And they're just talking about that. They're going back to their roots for the new Legend of Zelda. So it's going to be some time before that. What are you doing in the meantime? You just put out Pikmin 4. So, well, it's going to be a long time before another Pikmin. I think to your point, Sakurai is, I think, done with Smash Brothers. Whether or not
there's starting to be more and more talk about Smash Brothers 6.
Yeah,
I think there's no way
I don't know.
Nintendo's not gonna either they're gonna be like, they're gonna go to Sakurai and they're gonna say, hey Sakurai, we would love for you to make this, but if you're not,
here's a ton of money.
We're just not gonna let this franchise die. So either you will make it or somebody else will make it. There's no way. If I'm not a Nintendo executive, I will show Sakurai as much respect as he deserves. But I will go to him and be like, look, we got to have this come out. If you don't want to make it, if you want to make other games, I will respect that. But we've got to take this franchise off you then, because we just can't not make it.
I would love if they came out with a freaking Star Fox. Like, hey, Star Fox Zero
Star Fox
failed
is
on
like
the Wii U.
Twisted Metal. That's not happening. I mean, ever since, and there may have been a DS game that people really enjoyed, but ever since Star Fox 64, they've been chasing that success. Or that quality.
Well, Star Fox 64 3D on the 3DS was their last great Star Fox.
So ever since then, they've been trying to figure out what to do with Star Fox, and they've never figured it out. And Pikmin, I'm glad that Pikmin is still a thing. I'm glad they put out more Pikmin. I'm sorry, though. That's a cult game. That's a cult favorite game. It's not a big seller. So, and again, like, I don't mean to shit on the Mario sports games, but if the thing that I have to look forward to most as a Switch owner is Mario Kart or Mario Tennis Fever, I'm not that excited. I'm just not. And so, yeah, I think Nintendo could turn this around. I don't think Nintendo is dead in the water by any point. I think that there are still plenty of things they can do to amp up Switch sales and have a really successful generation and make tons of money. But what they've done so far, obviously, and like you look at last year with the holidays where their sales were disappointing, they had Mario Kart as a bundle pack in, and Switches were available, and it's still disappointed. That tells me that people don't want to play Mario Kart except for the people who already bought the Switch.
Well, let's see what Nintendo has. I mean, they just the thing always people said about Nintendo was that their first party games were strong, but their third party games were weak. Well, they've got a ton of third party games coming to them now. Now it's like usually
Street Fighter 6,
inferior
though, right?
games.
That's out on the Switch, Street Fighter 6.
Well, no, like I said, is they now have they just with their partner Direct, they announced Resident Evil Requiem, they announced Pragmata. You've got games coming out, but if people are buying the Nintendo, because like I bought my Switch to play Legend of Zelda and Mario, and if you only have one every freaking 15 years, it's like, okay, well, we had one in the last game, I guess we're skipping this console. Because you got to figure on the Switch, we got both Mario Odyssey and Super Mario Wonder. Two fantastic Mario games. But gotta get something else out for it. They actually just announced DLC for Super Mario Wonder. And it's like, okay, we need something a little bit more than just DLC for a game that we already have. Come on, Nintendo.
Well, because Odyssey was what, 2017?
No, 2018, I think, because the Switch came out in 2017. And I think it was a little over a year that Mario Odyssey came out. Let's see.
I remember Smash Brothers came out 2018.
Odyssey release date was, October 27th, 2017.
So
okay,
at the end of this year, we'll be 9 years removed from that game, from the last 3D Mario. And I don't know if Nintendo, because obviously the Galaxy movie's coming out, so I don't know if Nintendo sees that as, hey, y'all 3D Mario fans, like, here you go. I don't know if they see that as a replacement for a 3D Mario game, but I have less confidence in Nintendo putting out games, obviously since I haven't bought a Switch, than maybe I ever have, because not only the Zelda 35th anniversary was a disappointment. I'm sorry, I played Skyward Sword. No thanks. Sorry. You could have done better. Like, you could have put out you just could have given us more than that. And the Mario 40th anniversary, I feel like they have really dropped the ball on the big anniversaries. Now, maybe the Mario 35th was different. I think they did a better job with that. But in general, they seem, depending on how they handled the Legend of Zelda 40th anniversary, and of course there's thousands of rumors flying out there for that, but in general, like, that's maybe the core of what I look at Nintendo is, these are massive anniversaries. Like, you can say, oh, well, it's not that big a deal. It's only one anniversary. We have to wait 5 years for this shit. You know what I'm saying? So I just feel like they've really dropped the ball on that shit. The Zelda 35th anniversary.
More games.
The Zelda 35th anniversary is, we have got, and I'm sure people are tired of me talking about this, but we've got Switch 2 versions of Switch games that we've already played 6 or so years ago. But yet you're telling me we cannot get HD versions of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask for the 40th anniversary, which may happen. But that is easy. That is low-hanging fruit, and they fucking refuse to do it, and it's maddening. I don't understand.
Making Wind Waker HD playable. Like, they gave us Wind Waker on the GameCube Nintendo Switch Online program, but what about Wind Waker HD?
See, and look, they released a Wind Waker HD and a Twilight Princess HD 2-pack, I think, years ago. Like, there are 4 games there in Majora, Ocarina, Wind Waker, and Twilight Princess. You could bundle at least 2 of those games together. You could bundle Ocarina and Majora's. You could bundle Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. And if you say, hey, we're making these available on the Switch, it'd be a fucking win. But they absolutely goddamn refuse to do it. They refuse to do just the easiest, most... Like, I saw that the original Pokemon games are coming to, like, a bundle pack to the Switch too. The Game Boy games, I think.
I don't remember.
But yeah, I think they're bundling together the old Game Boy Pokemon games, like the first generation. And I say Ocarina and Majora's Mask because those games, yes, they were available on handhelds, but those games came out in 1998 and 1999. Almost 25 years ago. For God's sakes, if there were ever games that deserve to be remade and put out on a fucking television, it's those 2 games, more than anything. And I don't know why Nintendo just goddamn refuses to do any of it. They absolutely refuse, and I just don't get it. I don't understand. It pisses me off every time we talk about it, but yeah, that's an easy win. There are 4 games there, and you can release bundle packs of it and charge $70, or you could put them piecemeal on the shop and have people buy them. But that would be a big win from the Zelda community. People would be championing Nintendo. All the Zelda YouTubers would love it, and it's like the easy lob home run. And I don't know. I don't understand why they don't do it. But so I mean, this Nintendo, they have what they need to reverse this situation. They have what they need to reverse the discourse around the Switch 2. Hey, system's solid. We know we're not going to expect bleeding edge tech, but it's a solid system. We just want something to play, and Nintendo has the IP to make that happen. We just haven't seen it
yet. Alrighty. Okay, so now we did actually post up for some questions, and we got some. Thomas actually wrote in and gave us a bunch of questions, so some of them I will stick to the point. This is a gaming podcast, so we're going to do some gaming questions. He did ask a question about Nintendo being nothing but blood-sucking vultures. I think we addressed Nintendo efficiently here on that. Next, he asked some questions about Resident Evil. we think it'll bring back tradition, or will cut a new path of horror. And Thomas, I apologize. Some of your questions just don't come through. Obviously, your voice to text is a little hairy here. So I think the new Resident Evil will give people a good mix of both horror and action. So I think I think they're finding the right balance. They've been doing that in 7 and 8. I don't know, Alex. You don't have much input on the Resident Evil path, right?
No, but it seems like, I mean, we've had Daryl on talking about Resident Evil, and it seems like people who are longtime fans of the series and who maybe weren't too keen on how much they switched to action in even, 4, 5, and 6, it seems like there's a much better balance of that. I mean, you have to have some action, because if you're going to sell a game to a mass market audience, I don't know that you can do strictly horror, pure survival horror. I think that Dead Space kind of showed that a little bit, because obviously Dead Space 2 remake is not happening. Dead Space as a series, died with 3, which was a more action-focused thing. So you got to find the right balance to give people who are longtime fans that survival horror feel, but you also have to have an action element to it where people feel like they can defend themselves, because Siren Hill Shattered Memory is a game where you couldn't defend yourself, you just had to run. I just don't feel like that's really going to be as successful as these companies want.
No, agreed. And they even talked about that in some of the other games, or the discussions about Dead Space. They said, at some point there were players being on edge all the time, and they can't have that. They need to give players some sort of break from the horror and the intensity. So that's why they develop different sections. So yeah, it's an interesting concept about it. But that's why I think with the way that they're doing Resident Evil Requiem, they've got some good balances. We'll see. They tried to do something like that in 6 and failed horribly. So hopefully they do something a little bit better. Which Resident Evil game has the best car sequence, in your opinion? Out of all the Resident Evil games, I can't think of one memorable car sequence. I'm really drawing a blank, so I apologize, Thomas. I don't have an answer for you. I don't know. Maybe Resident Evil 5. I thought there might have been car sequences in that one.
Yeah, of all the things, the moments I can go back to in Resident Evil 5, none of them involved a car. So
yeah, I don't know. I'm just looking at it going, what the heck car sequences were there? Because that's the only one that I could have thought that there was a car sequence, because you were traveling quite a bit.
I don't know, Thomas, if you think, I remember there were some shooter sections where you were in the back of a Jeep, and I think one, there was a mounted gun that you had to shoot from, maybe it had had bikers chasing you, the Ouroboros bikers, but other than that, I can't really remember a car sequence all that much.
Yeah, you tell us what your favorite car sequence is. You asked the question. We're asking it back to you.
Yeah, maybe you can jog our memories, because it's been so long since I played. I played Resident Evil 4, but yeah.
Yeah. And then his most relevant question is, if Tricky reaches a certain plateau of trophies, will he finally just play for the love of the game rather than trophy hunting? And Matt M wrote in and said, doubt it. And I tend to agree with that assessment.
I think that Tricky is always going to hunt just for the numbers, because as long as there are people out there in the world, as long as there's a big enough audience for it, Tricky's always going to. I think Tricky does look at the international numbers and the national numbers, because if you go to PSN profiles, it shows you how you stack up nationally and globally. I think as long as there's always something like that, he's always gonna want to inflate his numbers. He's always want to go for the low hanging fruit on top of playing other games that he enjoys playing. I think that the problem is that Tricky has enough time where he can do both, where if it came down to where Tricky had to choose between purely playing crap games for easy platinums and playing games like Ghost of Yotei and Horizon and games he really enjoys, I think he would make the decision to play just games he enjoys. But because he's got the time to do both, because a lot of those easy games are just under a minute or under 10 minutes, I think that he's just going to keep going at it.
I agree. Speaking of going at it, finally, as we going towards the end of the show, we have our topic of the week, which is actually a dual topic of the week. two things that came out of the news recently, and one of them being PS Store finally gets feature inexplicably removed years ago. A bizarrely removed PS Store feature that finally returned to the storefront web version, making browsing a little less cumbersome. For some reason, Sony removed the ability to view game images on its web store, forcing users to look up games that they weren't familiar with elsewhere. That seems like a very weird thing to have taken out and just randomly added back in.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, I think that it's one of those things where Sony figured that it was not so integral. Where there are things that people and features that people expect to have when you're playing on PlayStation, and I feel like Sony gave. I mean, there have been some things where Sony kind of dropped the ball, or it came later than it should have. But I think that some of the things, like, Sony just sees them not as integral to the experience, where it may seem like just a common feature, but also if it's one of those common features that people just expect to come in the package, people may overlook when it's not there. So
Yeah, I don't know. The fact that it was available on the app but not the web was just strange. I don't know.
I see with that kind of thing, like, yes, I agree with you that it's strange, but Sony also may have looked at how many people use the web page, the browser, versus the app. And I know I use the app. I don't ever go to the web page, so maybe the sheer numbers of it, Sony dictate that, hey, this is getting more use, this is getting more clicks, this is getting more eyes, so this is where these features need to be.
Yeah, but that, like, you got to think of what was it costing them. It's either a programming issue, a resource issue, or a time issue, which can be related to the other two. So, or maybe it was a you know, the article here talks about, possibly being a issue with developers using the art of other games. I don't know. It's a weird thing to have in one version of your resources, but not another. So I don't know. But with that, there's other things that are occurring in Sony, such as patenting a touchscreen PlayStation controller. Coming from Video Games Chronicles, basically it shows the patent where it's the image of a controller, but instead of traditional buttons, it's like a dual screen layout where they can then put the different buttons and put them basically wherever you want on those screens of the controller. So if you want your D-pad down and center like on the Xbox, or up and to the left like on the PlayStation, you can put your X, Y, and circle buttons, where I said Y like this is an Xbox controller. You can put your triangle, square, circle buttons anywhere on the right face, or maybe reverse it. Maybe you're a southpaw and want things a little differently. I think it's a neat idea in concept, but I think those of us who've played plenty of phone games realize how bad of a thing this could potentially be. I don't know, Alex. Did you see what this looks like?
No, I didn't. I have not paid attention to much news in recent weeks. But I don't. If you want to make this an option, if you want to trademark this and put it out as an option for people to use, that's fine. But to me, I don't like touchscreens. I don't. I mean, on a phone, sure. But when it comes to video games, the way I've traditionally played and been trained to play, I need the feedback from pressing the buttons. I don't want to press on the screen, because when I play a game, I press down like the circle or the square, and I feel like I get that sensation. And I get like I push it down, so I know the button's been down. Like the triggers when I shoot on, in Helldivers, I get that sensation of pressing down the controllers and feel the feedback. With a touchscreen, it's not the fucking same. I'm just tapping down on a screen, and even if it works, I'm not getting the same sensation. I'm not getting the same feedback, and so I just would rather play with buttons.
I think my biggest problem about touchscreen buttons is always, it's not even the tactile feel, because the phone can resemble a tactile feel when you're pressing the button. The problem is, on a phone screen, when you're not looking at it, your fingers tend to travel even so slightly. And unfortunately, sometimes that means you're going into pressing a different button, or maybe not pressing a button at all. I know when I'm playing a game that requires me to move the character forward and I'm doing, directional pads or something like that, the finger tends to travel up because you're getting no tactile feedback of where that button ends. So you're always guessing as to where it is. And now phone game developer or game developers for phones kind of solve that by making that area travel as well, where it's kind of like you just kind of keep traveling your phone up to the or your thumb up to the top of the phone, your character keeps moving forward, then you have to adjust back, and after a while gaming on like that, it just gets tiring. That's why things like the Sony Backbone or the Razer, I forget what the name it is, are things that attach to your phones that give you full size controller buttons, which work a heck of a lot better than what on screen controls work. So it's interesting that Sony has patented this, but it's just, I don't know how it's going to work in the end, if they're going to make something that's even successful to be able to do that. I feel like it's an interesting thing from maybe a disability perspective. You might be able to make something work because you could change maybe all of the controls to one hand, or even maybe you can even resize some of these buttons to make some of them larger or smaller, or depending on what you need. It also speaks to about game design, because what are they going to let you do? Are they just going to let you put the maximum number of buttons they always have on the controller? Or are they going to give you some options to create custom buttons or buttons that do multiple things? So that could have an impact on game design, which could be interesting or could fail miserably. So I don't know. It's an interesting patent. Definitely one that we'll see what comes out of it. Maybe on the PS6. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, it should be said that just because companies patent things doesn't always mean that they are going to come to fruition. But, they're just trying to protect an idea. I'm not saying don't come out with this thing. If you want to put it to market, that's fine. More options are great. Me personally, I think it's the reason why people, maybe part of the reason why people continue, brand loyalty over the years. Like, I know controllers change, but for the most part, if you play on a PlayStation controller, like, you've trained yourself to use the DualSense or the DualShock, and the buttons are all around the same place, and it's just an easier, user-friendly experience when you've been playing on the same system and you've been playing with the same buttons and the same button configuration in the same general location. So having to retrain myself to use a touchscreen and changing up the buttons sounds like a nightmare. Now, as you point out, there could be advantages when it comes to accessibility. So, I'm not against the idea at all. Me personally, though, I could never see myself investing in it. DualSense has been fine for me for however many years I've been playing on the PlayStation 5, so going forward, it's just that's my preference.
So we'll see. I don't know. It will depend on whether I actually pick up a PS6 or any new console in the near future, based on how this series of releases went. But we'll see. We will see. So with that brings us to the end of another Trophy Whores episode. We want to thank you all for being here and listening to us, but we want to make sure that we give shout outs to those who deserve it. So Alex, please go ahead.
Give a shout out to our listeners, their awesome community, the fuel to the fire that is Trophy Whores, our fans. Thank you all very much for your continued support as we get, further down the road and, further into 2026. I say that, but it always means something, whether it was last year or 2 years ago. Your support has always meant a great deal to us. So, just thank you very much for your continued support. A shout out to my co-hosts, Matt, Yield, and Tricky, who have been very understanding of our personal situation here recently. And a shout out also to my loving and awesome girlfriend, Ashley. I love you, hon. I will try. So I will try to get through this without getting too emotional. I have missed time recently because we had to say goodbye to one of our cats, Juno. We had to put Juno down a couple years ago. And so, sorry. My message to all of you out there is, love your pets. Take care of them. Take plenty of pictures. Take plenty of video. Because one day you can't. So, I just want to say thank you to everybody for their understanding. just want to say that I love my girl Juno, and I was so grateful to be her dad. So that's going to be my shoutouts for the week. So.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. And yes, major shout outs to our listeners. Shout out to Tricky and Yield and you, Alex, for sharing with us and opening up about that. And so, shout out to my wife V, but definitely shout out to Juno. Shout out to all of our pets.
Yeah,
give your pets an extra hug tonight, folks.
If you all have ever gone through that, or if you're going through anything like that right now, please understand that my thoughts are with you, because it's a really rough, difficult thing, and it's still every day. It's going on 3 weeks now, and it's just every day is still difficult. So I just want to throw that out there for anybody else who may be struggling with it, because Matt and Tricky both talk with me about things. So I'm grateful to you all, but there's just always an incomplete feeling now. But I appreciate all the support for the show, because it does help me get back to some semblance of life. So just thank you all for all the understanding.
So with that said, thank you all for being with us tonight and sharing in this love of games and life. And with that said, we will see you on the next episode of Trophy Horse.
Later.
The theme song is Venus by the band Even off their album Zenith. Permission granted by the band and 12 Stone Records. You can find them on Facebook by going to www.facebook.com/evenphilippines.